My name is Chuck Osil. Today I will be presenting my topic on regulations of pesticides and why pesticides is bad for the ecosystem and the environment. So basically, I've been wrapping my head around how I was gonna talk about the use of pesticides and how bad it is for the ecosystem and the environment. And I'm gonna start by telling a story. So when I was younger growing up, I was very close to my mom. I grew up in Nigeria. And my mom always was cooking. And I would watch her cook in the kitchen. And I would always see her as she was cooking. She would put salt in her food. And I always thought like her food was so good. And the reason why it was so good was because of the salt in the food. So as a young kid, I was 9, 10. I started cooking, trying to make noodles. And I was putting a bunch of salt in my noodles. And my mom sees me and like basically scolds me and tells me to stop. And I'm like, Mom, why can't I add salt to my food? You add it to yours and it's always so good. And she was like, because salt is a chemical component and so much of everything is bad for you. And I'm like, but you use it too. And she was like, yeah, but you're putting it way too much and it's eventually gonna be bad for you and kill you. And that's the same thing with pesticides. Now, when people say pesticides, you think about insecticides that kill bugs, and pesticides like during the summertime when the pesticide companies come and tell you you have like a bunch of bugs in your garden or your lawn and you need the pesticide. But people don't think about the effects and the dangers that these pesticides cause in the society. According to Dr. Gold on NCBI, the pesticide business is about $500 million to $1 billion across the world. That's 2% of the world market. And so you can see that pesticide is a huge money-making business for most of these big companies. So like they don't tell you the risks of using pesticides and how it eventually harms your health and how it eventually harms the environment. So today I'm basically going to talk to you about the pesticides, why it's good, and then after telling you the effective uses of pesticide, I'm also going to talk to you about the harmful effects of pesticide and how eventually it's killing out the population of humans and also affecting both plants and animals. So I'm going to start with the good things about pesticide. Now we all know pesticides are used to kill bugs. You hear pesticides, you hear about the insecticides at home. Most of the pesticides mostly are used for the food industry, and farmers across the country or across the globe use pesticides to kill rodents, crickets, locusts in the crops they plant. And because of this rodents and all these pests that eat up these crops, the farmers tend to use a lot of pesticides to try to kill those pests that eat up their crops. And so they can manufacture food in such a high level because they need to make money off it. Same thing with the food industry. They need these farmers to be able to produce these foods at a high rate, and so they are basically telling the farmers and encouraging them to use pesticides to help grow and manufacture this food so they can make more money, because the more they make, the more money that goes into their pockets. Also, pesticides are also used for like stadiums, soccer stadiums, football stadiums. It's a big market because these stadiums have grasses and these players play on these grasses and they want to make sure there's not like any pests on the grasses. And so it's also a very big market where these pesticides are used in stadiums. Pesticides are also used in buildings. You see, if you have a building at home, you have a house, and you notice in your house the woods are being eaten down and it's all the foundation is having a problem. You call the pesticide company and they come and they spray pesticide all across the house to make sure the woods are not eaten into. So those are all the good uses of pesticides, and they are effective in their own way. But the main thing is the negative effects of pesticides actually outweigh the positive effects of pesticides. So I'm going to talk about the negative effects. I'm going to talk about starting with plants, and I'm talk about it in animals, and then basically in general for humans. For plants, about 3 years ago, I had the opportunity as an undergrad in my plant biology, to work with Dr. Goodell and we had in my school we had what is called a pollinator garden. Pollinator gardens are basically a garden full of flowers, and the flowers produce plants, and these plants produce different other things, and they help beautify the surroundings and everything. So my research in the pollinator garden was basically to see how different species of flowers communicate with each other and how they grow and how they send signals for feeding, for mating, for reproduction. So we started this research with the goal of actually trying to expand the pollinator garden and actually help, in turn, take it to Georgia government and try to see if we can implement more pollinator gardens across the city. But what we found out doing this experiment is most of these flowers and plants were not surviving and they were dying, and it was all coming down to the pesticides that were being used around the school to help eliminate like bugs and pests. Plants actually communicate with each other. Plants have signals. They actually have a way of communicating to one another, and most of all, their feeding mechanism is one where they need pollinators. So you see the hummingbee, the honeybees, they bring food to the plants, and the plants give them nectar. So it's like a mutualistic relationship. And what we are finding out is because of pesticides, these plants are not able to communicate with their pollinators that will come give them the essential nutrients they need to grow. And in turn, these plants are dying off, or the flowers are becoming extinct, like the bella flower, becoming extinct. What a natural flower that was like one of the most beautiful flowers, but it's becoming extinct because of no way of communicating with pollinators to get food and grow. Another thing we all know is photosynthesis. So we know plants use photosynthesis, right? They give us oxygen as humans. We give them CO2, and they use the CO2 with sunlight to produce sugar which they use to grow. And because of pesticides, plants are not able to communicate with one another, and they're not able to go through their photosynthesis cycles because pesticides are out here eliminating the ways they use the signals. In turn, it's going to affect us as humans because 1/3 of every food we eat comes from plants. Most of all the crops, rice, peppers, all these things they all grow from plants, and eventually humans will be the ones to suffer from this plant not being able to communicate due to pesticides. All right. So I'm going to go and talk about animals now. And when it comes to animals, we tend not to look into the animals because we tend to mostly look at domestic animals. But there are so many animals out there in the food chain, and in the food chain they have the predators, and then they have the bottom feeders. And eventually it's going to come up to the predators, which is us as humans, because we're at the top of the food chain. In 2006, according to ResearchGate, in a cave in Brazil, some researchers found about 20,000 dead bats. They were all dead in the cave, and basically, researchers began to think, why is this happening? It was called the white nose syndrome. And basically, researchers found that the pesticides being used to treat plants, what happened is when they put this pesticide on plants and it rains, the rain washes away the chemicals in the pesticides, and somehow it finds its way into the waters, lakes, rivers, and oceans, and then finds its way into the lakes and the caves. So these pesticides that go into the lakes end up weakening the immune system of bats, and next thing you know, there's a bunch of dead bats, and they're all dead and they can't reproduce. And we all say, what does bats do for us? They're just flying birds. But they are part of a huge ecosystem where if you take out their significance, eventually down the line, it's going to spiral and get back to us as humans. Another bad effect of the pesticides in the oceans was tadpoles. Now we all know tadpoles have gestation periods, where they go through their mating sequences and they all grow into tadpoles between male and female. And researchers have found that now in the rivers and lakes, they are no longer male tadpoles because the pesticides that are infecting the rivers eventually turn male tadpoles into female tadpoles during gestation period. And now there are lack of male tadpoles in rivers and oceans, which was very interesting when I saw this. And I was really stunned. And it's something we don't look around, but eventually, if these tadpoles are becoming all female and there are no male tadpoles, then eventually they're going to get extinct and there will not be any more tadpoles. And the biggest ones was food poisoning, fish poisoning, shrimp poisoning. If you like seafood, yeah. Because you go to a restaurant and you eat some seafood and you go home and you spend most of your time in the restaurant and you're like, how did this happen? What happened? They are so good at what they do, but yeah, these pesticides that wash their way into lakes eventually poison or eventually stain the shrimps and the fishes, and eventually these fishes and shrimps are going to be ate by us as humans, and that is a problem because eventually, if we can't stop this, there are going to be a lot of human population being wiped out due to food poisoning. And the last point will be us as humans, how pesticides affects us as humans. And we know the pesticide company, they come to your house every day and they tell you have bugs, roaches. But these pesticide workers that use these chemicals, pesticide, which is made up of ethylene dibromide and phosphate and zinc. This pesticide material, they do contain a lot of chemicals. And if you have asthma or bronchitis and you walk around an area that just being used, pesticide has been used in that area, you will not be able to survive because these chemicals will eventually flare up your condition and you can end up dying. According to Dr. Gold, pesticides kill about 500,000 to 1 million humans every year, and it's becoming a huge problem for humans in general. They're trying to find a way to be able to use pesticides in an effective way and eventually try to see how the benefits can actually equal or be less, or the negatives can actually be less than the benefits. And then what will you do about pesticides? If you ask me, there's two things you can do. The first thing we're going to work on is there's something called the Pesticide Action Network, PAN. Everybody can Google it. You can go there and sign up. You can sign up, and the more signatures they get, the more the government will be able to respond to be able to regulate the pesticide business, because these companies are making billions and billions of dollars every year, and they're not going to stop. Just like gun control, just like any other big thing, but these companies make a lot of money from these chemicals and these weapons, and they're not going to stop till people up and pick and try to help. Another thing is you can write to your legislators, to your senators. Every district has one, I just found out, and you can also write to them and tell them your family members are being exposed to chemicals, your children are being exposed to chemicals. You're going out to restaurants, eating seafood, fishes, and you're not even sure if you're going to make it back home, or you're going to be so sick. So that is ways that we can help bring down the negative effects of pesticides. Like I did say, pesticides are a huge problem, and they're actually really, really bad for our ecosystem and our environment, and we as the society have to help stop it, us as humans. And that is a problem because eventually, if we can't stop this, there are going to be a lot of human population being wiped out due to food poisoning. And the last point will be us as humans, how pesticides affects us as humans. And we know the pesticide company, they come to your house every day and they tell you have bugs, roaches. But these pesticide workers that use these chemicals, pesticide, which is made up of ethylene dibromide and phosphate and zinc. This pesticide material, they do contain a lot of chemicals. And if you have asthma or bronchitis and you walk around an area just that just being used, pesticide has been used in that area, you will not be able to survive because these chemicals will eventually flare up your condition and you can end up dying. According to Dr. Gold, pesticides kill about 500,000 to 1 million humans every year, and it's becoming a huge problem for humans in general. They're trying to find a way to be able to use pesticides in an effective way and eventually try to see how the benefits can actually equal or be less, or the negatives can actually be less than the benefits. And then what will you do about pesticides? If you ask me, there's two things you can do. The first thing we're going to work on is there's something called the Pesticide Action Network, PAN. Everybody can Google it. You can go there and sign up. You can sign up, and the more signatures they get, the more the government will be able to respond to be able to regulate the pesticide business, because these companies are making billions and billions of dollars every year, and they're not going to stop. Just like gun control, just like any other big thing, these companies make a lot of money from these chemicals and these weapons, and they're not going to stop till people actually stand up and pick and try to help. Another thing is you can write to your legislators, to your senators. Every district has one, I just found out, and you can also write to them and tell them your family members are being exposed to chemicals, your children are being exposed to chemicals. You're going out to restaurants, eating seafood, fishes, and you're not even sure if you're going to make it back home, or you're going to be so sick. So that is ways that we can help bring down the negative effects of pesticides. Like I did say, pesticides are a huge problem, and they're actually really, really bad for our ecosystem and our environment, and we as the society have to help stop it. Thank you.